Hey friends, I'm so excited to share with you how I teach history in my homeschool. This is how I keep it interesting, entertaining, not dry and boring and forgetful. We use a little bit of books, timelines, mapping, and hands-on activities. The other thing I love about my approach is that it is simple, not always easy. I'm not saying always easy, but it is simple and it can be consistent. I don't have to try to plan extravagant field trips or extravagant international trips to teach history. I feel that this can be done on a budget and in a relatively short amount of time where I'm not spending a whole day teaching history, right? So I love that about it. I love being able to teach history in a way that sticks and is budget friendly and busy mom friendly. I don't teach with a textbook because I don't think facts stick the same way that a living book like this one, for example. It's a book, a historical fiction, about a time in history, and I can promise you that it will be more impactful than reading a dry textbook with some names and dates about Queen Elizabeth. This will make such a deeper, longer lasting impression for my daughter. She's really enjoying this book. I have already read it because this is my second time doing this particular grade. But that is why I teach in this way. I also think that when you are incorporating these other pieces, it does something in your brain. It helps them to maybe more clearly see and understand and grasp the concept of following the timeline and looking at a map and pointing to it and being like, okay, this is where this happened. This was the journey she took. She went from here to here. These things will so much more clearly help you to remember something than just reading about Elizabeth's reign from this year to this year. You know what I'm saying? So that's my approach. We're doing a backbone book, we're doing some living books, we're doing timeline and mapping, and we're doing some hands-on activities to really just fully integrate ourselves into each specific thing. And I will talk about more of each of those individual aspects as we go along. The backbone of our curriculum for this year specifically, and again, if you haven't watched my videos before, I use Sonlight's curriculum. So I buy their instructor's guide and I buy all the books from them because they are just wonderful. And at this point, I could probably piece it together myself because I've done it for so long. But why? When I can just buy it from Sonlight and I don't have to piece it all together myself. It's perfect. It's gold. Also, I bought already through 12th grade for my oldest son. That has been a huge money saver and also time saver because I just buy the consumable products that I need to for each grade and I'm already set. Anyway, so we start with the book. I'm going to call it the backbone of our history program. Each day I usually read 1 to 2 chapters from the story of the world or whatever that backbone book is. It could be Child's History of the World. I've read that one as our backbone book for some of my other grades. But the Story of the World, this particular series, I know there's at least 4 volumes, and this is number 3, and we're reading number 4 later this year. But this book, we read like 1 chapter generally a day, and that's telling about a specific time in history. This first week, we're reading about the Holy Roman Empire, the riches of Spain, the Dutch Revolt, and then the Queen Without a Country. So we're just reading like a small portion, right? We're just reading 1 little chapter, maybe 2 each day, but keeping the flow, keeping the storyline fresh in your mind, keeping where we're at in history fresh in your mind as we go. Like I said, we have 2 of these core history books, so we'll read both this and the next volume 4 this year. The next part is living books that correlate to that time in history. So in this case, I'm reading A Murder for Her Majesty by Beth Hillgartner, and my daughter is reading The King's Fifth. And both of these are set during the same time. A Murder for Her Majesty, we have scheduled to read over a 5-week period where we're reading 1 to 2 chapters every day for 5 weeks. Same amount of time that'll take my daughter to read The King's Fifth. So we'll be doing that while I continue to read 1 chapter each day of this book. So we're just kind of like focusing on a specific time in history and also painting that bigger picture, bringing it all about. So again, like these bigger players in the world history realm. We'll read a book about them or that time frame, and then I'll just keep reading. Like, I'm not going to read a book about the Dutch Revolt, okay? That's just one chapter. We're not reading it. We can't read a book about every single thing, but we're reading it about some of the bigger aspects, right? The other thing that you can do, but I want to be honest, I do not always do this, but you can ask questions. Sonlight also gives a study guide for every single chapter I read from Story of the World. The next thing is timeline and mapping. I think this is really important because it's more hands-on, even though it's not necessarily like a hands-on activity, but I do feel like it just does something where it helps you to remember better. So each week we have anywhere from 2 to 4 timeline activities and also 2 to 4 mapping activities, okay? So we are working on a timeline book, or cutting out a person, or it could be a person or an event, like the French Revolution. It's going to have its own event, right? Or a person. Christopher Columbus has his own little picture. And we'll put that in our timeline book. Now, I actually feel like for the timeline, I wish it was something where I could spread it across a whole wall. So I might do that. That video might come in the future. I might actually do a timeline where I just put it across my homeschool wall and really give that clearer, broader timeline than a book. But if you don't have a lot of space to work with, or you're just, not trying to have it be your whole life, you could put it in the timeline book. Anyway, we'll color the picture, we'll cut out the little person, and we'll put it in the timeline. You could also write in there if you wanted to, some notes, maybe the book that you read that correlated with it, something like that. Great choice. But Sonlight tells me, okay, this day and this day, we're talking about this person. So we know to go and look at our people's all of our timeline figures, and we know to do that, and then we know when we need to do a map. The mapping part I think is really fun. Again, Sonlight has you covered. They send you the maps, so you don't have to buy anything extra. They send you the maps, and they make it very clear in the book where this map is located, and in fact where the answer is on there. Like, it'll be like D5, it's like Battleship where you go and you mark it. They're very clear. I like to be like, oh, let's try to find it. And then the other thing I like to do, because the close-up maps are great, and in the case of Sonlight and these books that we're reading, she might be looking up this book character and where they are, and they might be traveling, and they can talk about smaller towns that aren't going to be on a globe. But if you're talking about a bigger picture, like I recently was reading a book to my boys, in that book, there's a girl and her siblings, and they go from London to Virginia. And for that book, I'll just pull out my map. Now, it's also on a map for Sonlight, but I'll say, okay, boys, where is the UK? She's in London, so that's here where the little star is. And then we're going to see like, oh, how far is the journey? She's on the opposite side of the UK that she needs to be. And then she has to go all the way over to Virginia, where her dad is. And then I can have them kind of see like, oh, what's the journey? Is she going to go anywhere else? Like, how is she going to get there? We don't even know yet. Is that ship landing anywhere else? If it is, if it goes to like Lisbon first, may take her there and then to Virginia. Where is that? But I also like to bring out the globe because I want them to have a more clear concept of the bigger picture, because I don't feel like the map necessarily is broad enough, but also so that when they are adults and they are curious about a place, they're not needing a small map that is super clear. They can find whatever it is they're looking for on the globe, right? So I love that because Sonlight provides all the things you actually need, and then you can add more if you want to. I view timeline and mapping and Sonlight's curriculum as a whole as a feast. And for the older kids, you could have them eat the whole feast. You could go over all the questions that Sonlight provides and do all the activities that are available to them. And for a smaller child, you could just read them the story and maybe have them color a picture of Elizabeth I. So I like it because it gives you a lot of options, but you do not have to eat the whole feast. If you don't have time, you definitely don't have to. You can just take the appetizer and skedaddle, right? You don't have to do every single thing. I fell into that trap for a while and I got really burnt out and overwhelmed and felt like a failure because I couldn't do it all. I couldn't keep up. Because I'm only doing 2 cores right now, because I have my boys that I'm working with for one thing, And then I have my daughter that I'm working with for the other thing, and my 12th grader is doing his own school. Because of that, this doesn't feel as overwhelming as it did, a year or 2 or 3 years ago when I had 4 children that I was trying to teach multiple grades, do hours and hours of read alouds, and also work. Next up is our Lapbooks. These are our hands-on activities that I think are really, really fun, really simple. We don't need to travel to Europe to see Buckingham Palace, which would be fun, but not everybody has the budget to do that. And so this is very, to me, this is a very budget-friendly alternative for living history, right? Doing activities that help you to remember whatever it is you're learning and studying. The Lapbook comes with instructions for each activity, which is great, okay? And this is totally optional. This doesn't even come in the full grade package. You don't have to get this. I get this as a supplement because I think it's really valuable. We've done a number of them at this point, and I just think they're a great addition to our homeschool, to our teaching history specifically. Okay, so right here you can see it says from the 17th century through the 20th century. And so that's what we're learning. That's what this is going to be about. That's what we're learning in this Lapbook. When you open it up, you can see there's multiple folds in this. And my daughter has already put in this, and the rest came pre-set up. So she put in this. This is postcards from famous folks. And inside of here, I think she's already done all of them, even though she only needed to complete 2 so far. But it's gonna have little postcards. And to my royal court in Moscow, okay? And so each of these is just little glimpses into history, obviously. And then in here, she'll add in things. So this whole thing will be built out front and back. Ross and Rachel quote there. Anyway, this is a really fun way to kind of bring history to life. And also, pro tip, if you're reading out loud to your kids, they can be working on this while you're reading out loud to them. It's perfect. They have an activity. They might be cutting. They might be gluing. Obviously, it's something they need to read and pay attention to. I'm not saying to try to multitask, but if it's just a cutting, gluing situation or coloring. I also want to say that Sonlight also incorporates language arts. The history is also in the language arts program. That's how I do it because I like to just have everything kind of in one place, making all the pieces connect. You don't have to, and I'm not even gonna show you. I'm just gonna explain for this particular core, maybe. She'll have copywork or a grammar piece that she's working through, and that copywork might be quotes from this book. The grammar study might be from this book or this book. It's going to teach language arts using the same stuff that we've already been studying just because it keeps it all making sense. But that is not necessary to teach history in this way. And so I'm not including that in this video because you don't have to do that. That's just how I like to do it because I like everything to kind of match and go along and work well together. And also that's how Sonlight sells it. So I like to keep things really simple and not make it too complicated because I just want to be able to remember what I'm doing and keep my head on straight and get all the things done. So that's how I teach history in my homeschool. I hope that this video is helpful for you in teaching history and how I do it, kind of like a unit study, but not quite. And also, if you want advice on how to do it yourself, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Happy to give feedback. I have been using Sonlight for a decade, and so these things kind of come naturally to me now, but boy, they did not in the beginning. I tell you what, I was so desperate for something that could help me ask these questions and understand what I needed to know. I'm a huge believer in the Sonlight way of doing things because I do think that they are there to help parents succeed in homeschooling. As a recap, my approach is this. I have one main history book, a backbone to my history program. From there, I'm reading living books alongside it, or my child is reading their own living book alongside that. We're doing timeline and math, which is going to teach more history, but also geography at the same time. And then we're doing hands-on activities that really bring it home even more and make it more fun and memorable. If this video is helpful for you, don't forget to share it with your friends. I'm on a mission to spread the word on being a happy homeschooler, and I hope that this history unit study is beneficial for you and that you can use it to homeschool your children and have history be fun and maybe even just the best part of your homeschool. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again really soon.